call the February 4th meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee to order. First order of business is citizens with CAC business to present to the CAC. Seeing none, can we have a roll call for attendance?
Here.
Present.
Here.
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 Here. Here.
Here. Here.
Here. Here.
All right, thank you. Next order item on the agenda is Year 45 CDBG subrecipient application presentations. Good evening. I'm Chad Kiefer, and it's my pleasure to serve as the current chairperson of the CAC. Tonight we'll hear presentations from agencies who are applying for Year 45 Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG funds. CDBG funds are provided to the city by the federal government Department of Housing and Urban Development. I want to thank each presenter for taking their personal time to make these presentations on behalf of their organizations and the individuals and families they represent and serve. I would like to go over a few basic ground rules we will follow this evening. I would ask everyone with a cell phone or other electronic device to please turn them off or place them in a silent mode. I remind each presenter that you have a 5-minute time limit for your presentation, and that includes time for any guests or other presenters you may have with you. If you did bring a guest, I ask that you allow your guest to address the CAC first. Megan Overton will keep track of the time with the timer you will be able to see. When your time has expired, you will hear a beep. If you have any handouts, please give them to Megan, and she will distribute them to the CAC members after their presentations. These presentations are being videotaped and can be seen on the Government Access channel at a later time. They will also be posted on the city's website. At the conclusion of your presentation, there will be an opportunity for members of the CAC to ask questions. I remind everyone that each CAC member has reviewed each application individually, and we have met together at work sessions with staff to ask for clarification of questions we had or to ask for additional information. Many of you have received these questions and have responded to them. Thank you for your timely responses. I mention this to assure you that there is no reason for concern if you do not get any questions tonight. Conversely, if you do get questions tonight, it merely means a member has come up with a question they had not previously thought of, or possibly they would like clarification of something in your presentation tonight. We will proceed with the presentations in the order shown on the agenda. I would ask each presenter to give your name and the agency, organization, and program you are representing. With that said, I will ask the members of the CAC to introduce themselves, starting on my left with Chris Miller.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Introduce yourself, please.
Oh, okay. My name is Chris Miller, and I represent the 5th Ward.
Reagan Johnson, City Davenport.
Dale Gilmore, 6th Ward.
David Frying.
Renita Mack.
Tammy Lord.
Jim Hepner.
Joe Heinrichs.
Elizabeth Hodges.
Mark Holloway.
Martha Neal.
Before we proceed with the presentations, Fred Klassen of the CAC will address the applicants on behalf of the CAC.
Members of the Citizens Advisory Committee, city staff, and all present here tonight, and all watching on television, are very much aware of the efforts at the federal level to control spending and to work toward a balanced federal budget. While these goals are very commendable and understandable, it does raise concerns about the future of the Community Development Block Grant, the CDBG program. The program has experienced significant funding reductions in recent years. The current year's grant represents a 45% cut from the high point of the CDBG program. Additional cuts are not out of the question. A factor of the block grant program, perhaps not widely recognized or understood, is the reporting requirements of the Department of Housing and Urban Development, otherwise known as HUD. which operates the program. That federal agency requires detailed and timely reporting of funding issues and expenditures. It is a concern that failure to fully comply with the accurate and timely reporting criteria could possibly be a factor in determining future funding allocations. With that said, the CAC wants to emphasize to all participants in the CDBG program the importance of accurate and prompt reporting to city staff and why increased emphasis is being placed on these matters with program recipients and will be emphasized with future applicants. In other words, we don't ask for information that we don't need, and we need it when we ask for it. Because of the federal funding climate, in addition to considering the need for and merits of the program and services applying for funding, the CAC must also take into account each applicant's timeliness and accuracy in reporting on the use of funds, as well as the applicant's overall regulatory compliance. The CAC has requested from city staff information regarding past compliance of currently funded applicants. That data will be used to evaluate each agency's capacity and record in managing CDBG funds and in complying with the CDBG regulations. Simply put, your performance and your record keeping may affect your monetary award. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. We will begin with our first presentation from Big Brothers Big Sisters.
First one out of the gate. Good evening. My name's Jay Justin. I'm a Davenport resident. I'm president and CEO Big Brothers Big Sisters. Been in that position now for 14 years, so it's been a few times I've presented to the CAC. A great message there about the federal fund connection. Over my 15 years, I've seen just a dramatic change in the flow of financial support for organizations like us. We're not a government-funded entity. We don't have a fee-for-service structure. We're not a subcontractor of a government entity. We're just an organization that believes that the community can come together and volunteer their time to help children that have challenges in our community. We do that in a combination of ways. One is that we use community adult volunteers who make a dedication of 12 hours, 8 to 12 hours a month over a 12-month period to enter into a one-to-one relationship with a child, and they interact with their parent and primary educator to provide the child some supports and guidance and encouragement with the main goal of improving their academic performance and their social well-being, their self-esteem. When kids feel good about themselves, they're more apt to engage in more positive things, socialize and be around more positive kids, make more informed decisions on their future. We've been in the Quad Cities since 1988. We're one block over in the old former Davenport Police Station building on 5th and Main. A couple of highlights. I provided some information to your staff on a couple of the questions on performance measures. We use a performance outcome evaluation through the administered through the AEA that surveys every single teacher that has a child that's mentored in the city of Davenport for academic performance, behavior, and social interaction. You'll see that data that shows over 50% of kids in our mentoring program improve in at least one subject area, which is vitally important. Over 70% of kids improve in their self-esteem and self-worth. It's itemized so you can see. We also provided you a scoring metric. We're in the top 10 in the United States in our performance out of 350 Big Brothers Big Sisters in the United States. Our average match length is 3 years. 25% of our matches have been together 5 years or longer. A lot of the partnerships and collaborations that we do as an organization is an effort to leverage resources in the community to get these kids access and experiences that they don't necessarily are able to get through their family structures. A couple of examples of those are the Putnam Museum, Figgy, Have Life, the First Tee program, the YMCA, LULAC, and Eastern Iowa Community College. The Putnam, Figgy, and the Y all provide free memberships to all of our matches to go there for some of their match activities. Have Life provides us many grants that we redistribute to Little so that they can have access to sports, arts, and music programming. travel basketball teams, travel volleyball teams that play an instrument. These are all things that are enhancing the academic and social well-being of kids, but they're limited because of their financial resources. We're seeking partnerships to overcome those barriers. The Eastern Iowa Community College Partnership is as a result of our high graduation rates. We're looking to help kids transition from high school into higher education, whether that's associate or trade schools. And we're using Eastern Iowa Community College and a lot of community partners around Q 2030 to help open that bridge. Happy to answer any questions that you might have. Now my time is up officially, 60 seconds. One important program that isn't in our application that I'm pretty proud of is called Bigs in Blue. About 3 years ago, a lot of the national media around law enforcement and the relationship between law enforcement and the community, we were asked to be one of 10 agencies, Big Brothers Big Sisters agencies, to pilot this. We have 10 memorandums of understanding with area law enforcement. We have 6 Davenport police officers, including the chief that's matched as a big brother. He goes to Garfield Elementary School. And we have an entire group of firefighters in West Davenport that are matched with littles in a school at Monroe Elementary School. In the Quad City area wide, we have 65 law enforcement officers who are sworn, who are Big Brothers Big Sisters in our program. So it's a great angle to kind of take a social issue and help build a bridge in our local community.
Great. Fred?
Yeah, one of the questions that we did have when reviewing your thing was, well, you guys said that there were no evenings, and I think there's no evenings for your office staff, is that right?
We just don't have official hours that we're
Okay.
open.
But we assume that some of these brothers and big brothers and sisters are contacting in the evenings as well.
Oh yeah, a lot of our match introductions, a lot of our interviews with the parents and families and volunteers are after hours.
Right, but we saw them. Wait a minute,
Yeah.
they're probably talking. You know.
But it's by appointment. It's not like we have
Okay, yeah, it's not
walk
office
in.
hours. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
All right, any other questions? Seeing none, thanks for your time.
All right, thank you.
The next presentation is from Friendly House.
Good evening. My name is Lorelei Fouts. I'm the executive director at Friendly House. I'm in my 32nd year at Friendly House, so I've been up here a few times myself. But I'm always honored to stand with other agencies because I think collectively what we represent is a very positive swath of meeting the needs of our families and children. Friendly House is an agency that serves very young to very old. We are asking you for support specifically for our program that serves our K through 5 kids. But we are always looking for ways to be better at what we do. You know, we've been around for 113 years, but that doesn't mean that there's not ways to do things better. And about a year and a half ago, the Y, a number of agencies got together, and our concern was our children were moving from agency to agency, from our 2-year-olds all the way up, and we knew and we could identify that some of our children were not being successful at Friendly House, they were not being successful in the school system, they were not being successful in other places. And we identified that some of the issues that we were seeing as early as 3 years old was the inability to self-regulate, the inability to articulate, the inability to control emotions, and the ability to understand that there were consequences for choices. At the same time, all of us in the social service industry open the paper every day, and our hearts are heavy because we see the names of kids who many of us have worked with year after year, month after month, family after generation after generation. So we put our heads together, and there was some dollars available, and we brought in a national trainer with a concept called conscious discipline. And I'm not saying it's the magic bullet. There's so many wonderful strategies. But what conscious discipline does is work not only with staff, but it teaches staff and children to learn some techniques that help de-escalate, self-regulate, make good assessments of where they are emotionally, recognize that they may be angry, frustrated, sad, mad, but that doesn't mean they have to lash out. So we've built places in our spaces where kids can go and calm themselves down. This strategy is really teaching our staff and our children at the same time. And I'll just real quickly mention that the 7 strategies that, and this is definitely a work in progress, but we're starting to see some success with this. Composure, anger management, delay of gratification. We all could learn from that, right? Encouragement, pro-social skills, how to be kind. You know, we were seeing young children that didn't even know or how to either accept or give kindness or be helpful. Assertiveness, that bully prevention strategy and understanding healthy boundaries. Choices, impulse control. You know, we're picking up the paper every day and we're seeing impulse control rampant in our community. Empathy, the idea of emotional regulation, understanding where someone else is coming from. Positive intent, cooperation, problem solving, and then finally consequences. We think that that is a great match and a great partner with schools who we believe are the experts in academic success. We don't feel like we can really be successful as well as the schools can. We think it's a great partnership. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to give our families a place that's affordable and accessible for them. We were open every day last week. We were open on the snow days because we say to our families, we're going to be here if you need us. I will tell you that not many of them needed us on Wednesday, and even though I told staff they had to come to work. But that's our effort, and I thank you for your partnership over the years with not just Friendly House, with all of us, because you know some of the things we're addressing are definitely a village issue, and I think there's some consequences and some cooperation that can benefit all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your time. The next presenter is Boys and Girls Club.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Zimmerman-Waldman. I'm the Director of Impact and Marketing for the Boys and Girls Clubs of Mississippi Valley. We are celebrating our 25th year in the Quad Cities this year, and our application was for the Davenport Club, which is located at First Presbyterian Church on Iowa and Kirkwood Boulevard. And rather than hear me talk, I figured it would be better to introduce my friend Keith here, who is a member of the club, and he's going to talk a little bit about his experience.
Hi, my name is Keith McKinney. Today I am here to talk to you about Boys and Girls Club, where I have been a member for 3 years. Club is a fantastic place to be, even if it gets a little loud. That doesn't ruin the fun. I like playing basketball and other gym games with the staff and other members. Upstairs we have electronics to play on like tablets and Xbox. But we also get to do educational things like brain quests. We also have tutors that come and help us out with homework. We do that during Power Hour. After Power Hour, we do our programs. There are a lot of programs like art, science, and cooking. I also get to take cello a few times a week. At the end of the night, we eat dinner, and on Wednesdays, we eat a meal the church cooks for us. Once we are done with our meal, we have some free time. We also have fun. During the summer, we go on field trips, play outside, and hang out with friends. With Boys and Girls Club, I'm able to go to cool events like the Games of Rama, where it's a big game competition against other clubs. Boys and Girls Clubs have helped me want to be a better person and shows me ways to be successful in my life. The staff have even helped me, my friend and I start our snow shoveling business called the Snow Bros. Thanks for letting me come in and speak to you today. What? Thank you.
All right. And I'm happy to take any questions that anybody has.
All right, seeing none, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
The next presenter is Family Resources.
Good evening. My name is Allie Brokaw. I'm with Family Resources, our domestic abuse program at Family Resources. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Shal to talk to you a little bit about her story.
Hi, my name is Shal Johns, and I appreciate you letting me come and speak to you today on behalf of Family Resources. I'm a domestic violence survivor, and I have been helped tremendously by the Family Resources legal advocates. Domestic violence survivors are at the mercy of the legal advocates to help us through the incredible, difficult process. It's emotionally draining. It's very hard to understand the court proceedings and things that are going to be happening. The knowledge that they have is very valuable to domestic violence survivors like myself. When you leave your abuser, you're very lost, you're confused. Sometimes you've been physically attacked, mentally abused, and much more. Your mind is swirling in so many directions, and this is another step that we desperately need help with. Without the advocates, I would be lost in the mess of the legal system. The ways that I have been helped, including explaining the laws to me and the difference between criminal and civil no-contact orders, helping me fill out the paperwork to get no-contact orders for myself and my kids, going into the judge to file the paperwork for me, sitting with me at court hearings, driving me to and from court hearings so that my abuser can't find my vehicle, answering my wide variety of questions, and helping me get set up with the court system so that I can access all the online court documents. Having someone to sit by you while waiting for court and seeing a familiar face in the courtroom is invaluable and very comforting. It's very difficult to have to face your abuser in court, and it really helps to have a friendly, familiar face to ease your stress. The funding for these advocates is definitely needed on a continued basis. I hope you'll continue to support the legal advocates for victims like myself.
Thank you for sharing, Shal. So at Family Resources, we provide support and services to survivors of domestic abuse, sexual abuse, human trafficking, homicide, and other violent crimes. Every year, hundreds of survivors of domestic violence file for orders of protection in Scott County. These are individuals who are begging the legal system to help them stay away from imminent physical assaults from their abusers. Our legal advocates help individuals like Shal understand and navigate the legal system, inform them of their rights, connect them to resources, and safety plan with them. We empower survivors to take back some of that control over their own lives. Without your support for these services, hundreds of survivors of domestic violence would not receive the level of services that they do today. So thank you so much for your support. It truly does mean the world to Shal and so many other survivors in our community. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
How many?
Yes,
Thank you. How many do you house? How many victims or, people that you house?
In our sheltering
In
services,
your sheltering
is that what
services,
you're asking?
yes.
I would have to get back to you about the stats for how many we serve in our sheltering services
Okay.
per year. I know in our domestic violence program, last year we served over 900 individuals.
900?
But for our sheltering and housing services, I would have to get back to you about that statistic.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The next presenter is Project Renewal.
Good evening. I'm Ann Schrick-Rath with Project Renewal. I'll have my guests introduce themselves and tell you a little bit.
My name is Anthony. I've been here for like second grade. We can learn and go field trip, and like my favorite thing to do go summer. That's it.
Hi, my name is Ariana, and Ariane Shears. am 12 years old, and I've been in Project Renewal since I was in first grade. And my favorite things about Project Renewal is all the field trips, games, and all. But I like helping other kids and drawings. That's it.
You wanna go? You wanna go? All right. Dawn, do you have something? It's okay. Do you wanna tell them your name?
I'm a parent. My name is Dawn Evelyn. Both of my kids go to Project Renewal, 5 and 11. They learn how to read, write, do schooling besides activities. They get taken care of where they're not roaming the streets and doing things they ain't supposed to be doing. They go in the summer and they're getting well taken care of, and they need them, because if they didn't have them, we don't know where the kid would be today. Thank you. Come on, Mommy.
Thank you. One of the research resources I like to look at is called the Search Institute, and they talk about sparks. These are the interests, talents, passions that we have, things that give us meaning and a purpose in life. And discovering the sparks of youth are important ways to connect with them. Research has shown that kids who have at least these two important attributes, knowledge of what their sparks are, and relationships with adults who help support the development of these sparks. It shows, unfortunately, also, that many kids don't get the care and attention necessary to help them identify and nurture their sparks. This matters because kids who develop sparks and who have adults in their lives to help have higher grades, better school attendance, better physical health, empathy and social competence, concern for our environment, a sense of purpose, and like to give back to others. The opportunities Project Renewal gives our youth participants helps do just that, helps kids discover themselves, find their interests, what they're good at, what they don't like, what they do like. And it's not just about helping them with their homework, which we do and needs to be done, but it's also about giving them experiences, individual experiences, group experiences, family experiences, ways to communicate with other people, building and maintaining relationships to help them learn and how to relate and understand how things work in our world and in our community. We see it over and over again in completing what may look like a simple homework assignment. Sometimes there's questions and problems that are talking about things and asking the kids questions about things they can't relate to. They don't have some of these experiences to help them understand concepts that other kids may learn innately through family experiences, family vacations, or parents' businesses, social circles. But when you're not growing up with that kind of support, it adds hurdles and challenges in youth development and in what can be unsuspecting, hard to find ways. So your support through the Community Development Block Grant given to Project Renewal will do all those things, help provide our kids with the sparks that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your time.
Thanks.
The next presenter is Salvation Army.
Hi, my name is Shaquanta Buckley, and I was blessed with Salvation Army since 2014 when we moved here. Kelly, she led and guided me to be successful and get my own home. I've been on medical leave, though, since July 19th. Things are becoming a little hard, and God blessed me. He led me back to Salvation Army, and case manager Michael was awesome and diligent in helping me get the one-time funds to pay the rest of my rent that I needed. So I'm really grateful for that because I almost had no hope until, I prayed and he told me to go there and just try and see. And so I'm still in my home.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Larned. I'm the Program and Operations Director for the Salvation Army Quad City Family Services. Many of you have known that we changed our focus back on October 1st to homeless prevention. We wanted to change our focus into keeping people in their own home or going into a new home versus going into shelter. We still have our shelter. We just utilize motels instead of having a building of our own for shelter. But for our one-time assistance, we really wanted to focus on them staying in their own home. Statistics show that kids do better, the adults do better when they can have their own place to go versus coming into a shelter. So we're utilizing for rent assistance, deposit assistance, and utility assistance. And so we get a lot of people where they missed a rent payment because they needed to fix their car so they can get to work. Medical leave, and so they need that so they don't have to become homeless. And so that's the purpose of this program. And so we're asking you to continue to fund this program with a case manager. They do meet with a case manager when they come in. They work on some goals so that they can remain stable in their housing, whether it's budgeting, finding a job that has more income, whatever their case may be, so we can keep them in their own home or go into the new home that they're going into. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions?
For one-time assistance, we have one right now, but for October, November, December, for January, no, we have two, but it'll be split in time. So yeah.
So when you do help someone, is there a limit to? I know there's a one-time assistance, and then you say that you help them to either stay in their homes, etc. Is there a limit to how much you will help one family or one person?
So we do up to $400. If there is accentuating needs that need later down in line, then we will consider giving them more money if something else had happened. For instance, we had a lady that we got into a new place and her child died unexpectedly. And so in order to keep her in her place, she was very sick for a while, then she died. And so we paid another payment for her rent just so she could stay in there dealing with the medical stuff with her daughter being in the hospital and then the death. So we did pay a little more for that.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The next presenter is Vera French.
My name is Mark Cummings, and I represent the Vera French Supported Community Living, or SCL program. Our program serves individuals living in the community who are struggling with chronic mental illness, and our mission is a two-part mission. First, we try and help people maintain their stability so that their condition doesn't deteriorate to the point where they have to go into the hospital and perhaps then into a residential care facility of some sort. Second, we attempt to help people move forward with their recovery, gaining further independence and an ever-increasing quality of life. Here are a few examples of the kinds of things that we do. Many people who struggle with mental illness live lives of loneliness and isolation. Some only have one or two people with whom they have social contact, and others don't have a single person that they can reach out to, including family members. Birthdays can come and go without anyone to acknowledge them. The symptoms of their mental illness make it impossible for them to find employment, so they lack the social interaction with coworkers that most of us take for granted. Many of them stay alone in their apartments, leaving only for medical appointments or necessary errands. SCL caseworkers help people to escape from isolation and get into the community. people who haven't had a recreational experience in years find themselves going to a movie or bowling or attending our arts and crafts or a potluck. It's not unusual for people who are new to our program to tell us that our potluck get-together was the first time they could remember in years where they sat down to eat with another human being. Anxiety is something that most of us have to deal with to one extent or another. For some of our clients, anxiety becomes a monster that threatens to devour their lives. If I had to choose a physical object that would symbolize our services, it would be an abandoned shopping cart in a grocery store with only 4 or 5 items in it. If you ever come across such a cart, you'd probably assume that the shopper using the cart had merely stepped away from it for a moment, and in most cases that would be a pretty good guess. But it might be a cart abandoned by someone having an anxiety attack. That person thought they had it under control and that they would be able to complete this particular shopping trip successfully on their own, but in the middle of the store, anxiety rose up and overwhelmed them, leaving them with no option other than abandoning the cart and getting home to their apartment as quickly as possible. For these people, a relationship with an SEL caseworker can make all the difference in the world. The presence of their caseworker provides a sense of security that helps them remain calm. If they have an anxiety attack in the midst of the shopping trip, their caseworker can remind them to use coping techniques such as deep breathing and help them to maintain their focus so that they can get everything that is on their list. Some of our clients find it difficult to communicate effectively with providers of goods and services, which can include medical people. Depression can all but overwhelm and numb the mind. Anxiety can seize the controls and fill the mind with fear. And if you're one of those unlucky people who hears voices in your head muttering dark and ominous things, you can imagine how difficult that would make it to concentrate. So we help people with paperwork. Sometimes we sit with a client when they're on the phone to Social Security or an insurance company, providing verbal prompts as needed. In other instances, we help the client create notes that they can use to make sure they don't leave out essential information. Occasionally, as we interact with our clients, we become aware of medical concerns that the client is not dealing with for one reason or another. In 2 instances where we were able to convince people that they needed to go to the emergency room like right now, when they did go into the hospital, they were immediately admitted and put into intensive care units. I don't want to be overly dramatic, but in some instances, our caseworkers can be lifesavers. I always tell new clients that what I would like to do is wave a magic wand and make it all go away, but I haven't been able to find that kind of a wand. Even Amazon doesn't carry them. What we can do is make things better. Sometimes we only make things a little better, and sometimes it's a lot. And that's what your support of our program helps us to do. It makes it possible for us to help make things better for people struggling with mental illness. Any questions?
All right, seeing none, thank you for your time. The next presenter is Humility of Mary Shelter and Housing.
Good evening. My name is Cassandra Grip. I'm the lead grants manager for Humility Homes and Services. Thank you for the opportunity to illustrate how CDBG funds can impact Humility Homes and Services Emergency Shelter Service Coordination Program. In fiscal year 2016, the HUD Continuum of Care program priorities shifted such that programs which provided supportive services only without a directly funded housing component were no longer prioritized. This is the funding stream which at the time funded 4 full-time service coordinators within what was formerly known as Humility of Mary Shelter. The loss of this funding resulted in the unfortunate loss of those positions. However, it has also provided us with some much needed data to accurately display the impact that they had had on the outcomes of participants within the shelter. In the final year that the service coordinators were fully funded, 40% of participants who exited shelter left for permanent destinations. These destinations are typically rental units with or without subsidy. However, there are also some instances in which family unification is the result. Only 17% left the shelter without notifying the staff of any destination. To contrast, in the year following the loss of funding and the loss of those positions, only 8% of participants exited to permanent destinations, and an astonishing 47% left the shelter without notifying staff of a destination at all. Gathered in 2017, this data mobilized Humility Homes and Services to find a way to address the need to best serve our participants. In July 2018, the Eastern Iowa Mental Health and Disability Services region generously provided a one-time funding to hire 3 housing specialists to assist shelter participants in addressing those barriers and obtaining permanent housing. I would like to share with you some stories of participants that have been served so far by our housing specialists since July. One participant, a man in his 60s, arrived at the shelter in July of 2018. The participant self-reported that he had never had his own housing. He had always either lived with someone else or was experiencing homelessness. After working with the housing specialist for a few weeks, they discovered that he had received a Section 8 voucher, and his time to accept that voucher was nearly at an end. The housing specialist was able to work with Davenport's Office of Assisted Housing to request an extension, and in October, the participant moved into his own apartment for the first time. Another participant had been at shelter since March of 2018. This participant had severe mental health diagnoses and had stopped taking their medications. The participant also had a history of violence, and there was much concern from caseworkers that they may not be able to live on their own safely. The participant began working with a housing specialist who was able to connect with their case manager at Robert Young Center to apply for a waiver for rehabilitation services from DHS. The participant qualified for a specialized housing and moved into that housing in November. An update from their caseworker tells us that that former participant is stable and is, quote, doing amazing. A married couple with a baby on the way was staying at the shelter. As Humility Homes and Services only provides shelter to adult men and women, there was increased pressure to find housing as soon as possible. With the assistance of their housing specialists, we're pleased to announce they were able to find housing in December. They have a stable income and have so far sustained their housing. They're also happy to report that their baby was born 2 weeks ago. Although the program has not yet been operating at full capacity for a year, since July 2018, 30% of emergency shelter participants have exited shelter for a permanent destination, and only 14 have exited without notifying anyone. It is abundantly clear to us that having a fully staffed emergency shelter service coordination program will and does assist Humility Homes and Services in ensuring that homelessness is rare, brief, and one time. And we are requesting the support of the Citizens Advisory Committee and the City of Davenport in sustaining the program. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Seeing no questions, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next presenter is Economic Development Fund.
Good evening. My name is Suzanne Knutson. I'm the Economic Development Manager for the City of Davenport in Community Planning and Economic Development. We run the Economic Development Fund. We have 4 main programs. We have a small business loan program. We have a downtown Davenport jobs program, what we call the ED Fund, which is more larger manufacturing, and then a facade loan program. The goal of our funding is either to create jobs for people that are of low to moderate income means. That might be a small business owner, or it might be the people that they are hiring. And then the second component is to reduce slum and blight or eliminate slum and blight. We do more of creating jobs through the small business loan program probably than any other program we have. So where do we get our small business loan projects? I know part of the application was, who are your partners? I cannot say enough good things about the Eastern Iowa Community College Small Business Development Center. They are by far our best lead for loan generation coming into the city. Sometimes we're looking at doing loans for businesses. Maybe it's a small $20,000 loan that a bank is not interested in. They might not have perfect credit, but they have good credit. And we do check credit. We don't check a credit score, but we make sure they are current on their credit and not delinquent anywhere. Oftentimes, we had a lot of downtown projects this past year. You're probably familiar with Donuts and More. If you're not familiar with Donuts and More, you should go there because they're delicious. Bootleg Hill is a new meadery in the downtown. We did a Paradigm virtual reality bar, which I think is only the 2nd or 3rd in the nation, so that's pretty cool. For ones like those, we partnered with bank financing. So they had traditional financing, but not enough to get them through to the full project amount that they needed. So in those cases, we partner with them. We have continued to charge 2% interest, so it is affordable funding, but it is not 0% interest any longer. And it doesn't seem like that has affected our interest rate for people coming into the program. Happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Are these term loans? When you say that you help to partner with the bank, are they term loans?
Yes, typically if we're doing a $20,000, $20,000 to $60,000 loan, we'll do it at a 5-year period. For our economic development loans, which are oftentimes to a manufacturer, sometimes those will go up to $100,000. We will take those out to a 10-year period.
Yes, Dale.
It sounds to me like your department, I don't want to say competes, but complements the SBA. Can you give a brief as to, I mean, do you feel that you compete with the SBA, the Small Business Administration, or because I know that they also have loan programs, but do you get referrals from them? Do you give referrals to them? Can you?
Absolutely. Yeah, typically we'll meet with the bankers in town, especially the ones that are doing SBA financing. We don't refer out. We can say we have worked with such and such banks before. That's kind of the amount of, quote unquote referrals we can do. We've let them know what banks we've worked with. But oftentimes it is, okay, so they might be borrowing $60,000 or $80,000 through traditional financing through SBA, and they're able to second mortgage their home. But that's all the value they have left in their home. So then they might need another $20,000. Well, we can come in and be, we still need some sort of collateral, but we can be less strict about the collateral than maybe a traditional bank financing can be. Oftentimes, for our small businesses that are just at $20,000, we're the only source of funding they have. Sometimes we'll have people that have amazing credit, but it's also very little credit. They've bought everything cash or we don't buy it at all. And, a bank will look at that oftentimes and say, well, they don't have much for credit history. We look at that and say, we will give you a chance. You've paid your loans on time, what you have had. We see promise in there, but we do use the SBA to do or the Small Business Development Center to do a market analysis on each project to see if what they think for their numbers, for their profitability, is what's tracking local, regionally, and statewide.
Yes, Fred.
Yeah, question. Do you, and refresh my mind on this because I think we've asked this before, do you have an interest rate that you charge?
We do. We do, Fred. 2 years ago, we started charging 2% interest.
Two?
Two.
Very good, thank you.
And
Has it helped you guys to build it all?
Absolutely. It definitely helps to build.
In case this all dries up someday?
Exactly. It's, I think, less, it's not 0%. So, it is a little bit higher,
something.
But it is something, yes.
How about, do you have defaults?
We do, but I think we looked at our default rate from going back 9 years ago, and I think it was maybe 9%, which, we have the businesses that are, meeting the guidelines, and some of them that have closed up shop, some of them are still paying their loans. So I think that says something to the
Sure.
credibility of the people that are taking out loans with us. Sometimes businesses do fail. We know they're going to fail, but oftentimes they remain paying the loan, which is impressive.
Very good, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, Chris, I'm sorry.
I just had one question on the interest you charge. That 2%, does all of that money go back into the loan fund, or does some of it go to something else?
Nope, it all goes back into the loan fund.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, next presenter is Housing Rehab and Neighborhood Revitalization Fund.
Hi, I'm Dawn Cameron. I'm the lead financial specialist for the City of Davenport. I know you see me a lot as your staff liaison from the administrative side, but I'm here today to talk about our housing programs. I know when you look at our application, that looks like a pretty large ask. And with a lot of new members, I thought it might be nice to go over our programs. So for those of you who've been around a while, just sit back, relax. So the owner-occupied rehab loan program addresses safety hazards and code violation repairs. And since I was lucky enough to just hear the questions just asked, that is a loan. It is a fixed 15-year loan, and we have to make sure that that loan is affordable. So we do have 0 to 3% interest. It can be deferred if needed. So we have to look at each person on an individual basis. And again, what we're looking there is at safety hazard and code violation repairs. We see a lot of roofs, and especially right now, a lot of furnaces. Our loans average anywhere from $8,000 to $23,000, depending on need. We also took over a couple of years ago the exterior accessibility grant program, which is a little lengthy, but it's really just our ramp or lift program depending on what's needed at the house. And so we've done that now for a couple of years, and if I have time here, I have a couple of great stories from the last year I'd like to share with you, and that is a grant. We will install those lifts and ramps to ADA specifications. We have our down payment assistance program, which was also asked by the CAC if we would continue that program as well. And so we have, and that's where we will provide up to $2,500 in closing costs and or down payment for eligible first-time home buyers. And of course, they're getting their loans through lenders here. Our urban homestead program, that's where we will obtain homes, we'll rehab those to the federal standards, and then we will sell those homes to eligible home buyers. And I just here, right before I came here at 5:30, we were able to award one of our homes that we just rehabbed, so that was kind of an exciting thing to do right before coming here. And then we have our infrastructure program, and that's where we're looking at improvements in support of affordable housing. So we're looking at improving sidewalk, accessibility corners, and streets, which can include permeable pavers to manage stormwater. And so that kind of gives you an idea of how we break down that larger amount of money. And so out of these programs really comes like life-changing opportunities. I'm doing good? Okay, good. So a couple I wanted to talk about is one of our owner-occupied rehab loan households. They were without water for a year. And so they were using a convenience store around the corner and just weren't able to manage that $8,000 repair. So we were able to come in with our loan program and take care of that. And I can tell you that that just made a world of difference for that household, as well as we were able to do a little fix on their washer so they were able to wash their clothes. With our ramps and lifts, we had two this past year that have really like stuck out for me. One was a dialysis patient that the husband just couldn't get out of the house. So we always think about accessibility coming in. In this case, couldn't get out to the dialysis treatment. And so by putting in that ramp, we were able to get that connection outside and then out to her treatment. And then the last one we had was a household where we had a family member who couldn't come home. They literally were in a rehab facility, could be discharged, but the social worker there wouldn't discharge home because of accessibility getting in and just weren't able to meet the cost of that. And so we worked as fast as we can not to accrue any more medical costs for that family to get that accessibility so that person could come home. Any?
Bernita?
Okay, so you said that you do both loans and grants.
Yes.
So how would some of the people that need like that ramp and those lifts, how are you getting that information?
So the loan program is specifically a loan program, so that is anyone who's working in our owner-occupied rehab loan program is a loan. So within each program, it's either designed as a grant or a loan. So you wouldn't be able to, say you wouldn't apply for an accessibility grant and be required to pay for it. That entire program is a grant program.
Okay, so say for instance, if there was someone that was in need of that, how are we getting that out to the public to make someone aware? Because, you know, say for instance, if my mother-in-law needed, you know, a ramp built, how would she know outside of, you know, how would she find out about that?
Right. So we have done, in the past, we've done a lot of different marketing and also connection with us other social services. So when we took over that RAMP program, one of the things we did is contacted the services that are already in play, Genesis, Kelly Medical, and you know we talked to them to let them know if you have someone that you can't help, please give you know our name. We did the same thing with Genesis at social services at the hospital as well. So that's our main goal, is to try to connect with those people out there who are already going to be providing those services too. So if they can't, please refer on to us.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Chris.
What is your delinquency rate on your loan program?
I would have to check for you to get the most accurate one, but I can get that information for you.
Okay, and then also, you said you charge between 0 and 3%.
Correct.
How do you determine who pays 3 and who pays 0?
So we look at 30% affordability, so 30% of your monthly income and what you're paying for that in household expenses. So we will run those calculations on, say, if you have a first mortgage already. And so everyone is treated under that criteria.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Dale.
In the notes I've taken, the Salvation Army also does a down payment assistance. Can you compare yours to theirs or theirs?
I believe, and I don't want to speak for them, but I believe their assistance is for rent. I believe the Salvation Army is an emergency crisis assistance that would assist with rent. And I could be completely wrong, but that's how my understanding of it. Ours is down payment, so it would be a person who's gone to a bank and has gotten approval to buy a home for the first time, and meeting our federal eligibility and income requirements, they would qualify, and then with our program, we could provide up to $2,500 grant for their closing costs or down payment.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The next presenter is CDBG Staff and Operations.
I'm Heather Johnson with the City of Davenport. I work primarily with our CDBG and home grants, and I am also your staff liaison for the Citizens Advisory Committee. I always think it's funny that we hold planning and admin till the end, so we don't expect everyone to sit through and listen to all of this, but I always think it's ironic we hold it till the end, because really planning and administration comes in at the beginning of all of our grants. So if it weren't for the planning and administrative activities that we carry out, we wouldn't get this money. So I think sometimes the thought is that many of the things that we might do are optional or choices, and the fact of the matter is that they're not choices. So if we don't do each and every step along the way and dot every I and cross every T that HUD requires, that puts into jeopardy the grants that all of these agencies would get, because the city has to first do its job before any of them can get any of the money that comes through to them. That is our function as a pass-through. And so since we have some new members, I thought, even though I know you all sat through orientation with me, I will refresh you on the many, many steps that occur in the CDBG year. So they're a great benefit to our community, the federal funds, but nothing is really free. So there's strings with everything. So to get the funding in the first place, we have to do public input meetings. We have to gather data and prepare commission studies. prepare or commission studies. We bring it to you. We develop local objectives and general area of need and all of those things that we've been doing all this year and for the past few years. And we do that on an annual basis. Every year we have a plan, and then every 5 years we have to do a 5-year plan. All of those things have to be in place before any of the grant dollars will begin to flow. And then once the funds are granted, we have to prepare contracts for all of our subrecipient agencies. We have to monitor those contracts. We have to oversee the financial payouts of those, make sure that everything's being done correctly. We gather demographics on the beneficiaries of all of these programs. We do quality checks on the reports that they submit to us, because not everything is exactly right the first time it's sent in. So sometimes we have to go back and forth and kind of resolve questions or issues. So all of those are things that we have to do. We have to offer technical assistance. We monitor every single year, not just on an annual basis, but when there are individual issues, we have to pull single agencies in and talk with them individually about whatever their particular issue at that moment is. We have to do environmental reviews for every single project that we do, and that includes subrecipient activities, but also each and every address that we get through an application in our housing rehab program, each and every business that applies through our economic development program. There have to be environmental reviews for all of those, and that applies whether they actually go all the way through and get the loan or not. So we may do 10 environmental reviews on applications, and if 9 of those applications are rejected, we only get 1 project out of all of that work. And those are just things that have to be done, whether the project goes through or not. In order to do all of this work, we have to have a place to work. We have to have computers to work on. We have to use phones. We need to have the legal advice of our legal department. We have to have human resources to advise us on all the things that we can and can't do. We have to have our payroll department to pay us. So CDBG grant pays a portion of all of those services. Those are called indirect costs. So the city essentially charges the grant to provide those bits and pieces of services to us. And then once we get through all of that, at the end of the year, we have to report on all of the things that we did. So we do an annual performance report to HUD, where we have to gather up all kinds of little bits and pieces of information and put it together in a usable form, submit that into HUD. HUD then has, a very generous, let's say, amount of time to reply back to us on that. And there are questions that come back and forth, so we have to be here and available and ready to answer those questions and clarify whatever issues HUD might have before they approve our report. And it's not until that report is done and final that all of the money that we actually got in that year is ours. So up until that point, anything that HUD decided they didn't want to pay us for, they didn't have to. So we have to do all of those steps in order to make the money flow for all of the agencies that you've heard from tonight. So it's always ironic to me we wait to do this last, because it's the first, middle, and last step of everything we do. Thank you. Yeah, I planned it
All right,
that
any
way.
questions? Seeing none, thank you to all the presenters. You feel free to leave, or if you want to stay for the meeting, you can too. The next item on the agenda is review and approve the minutes of the January 7, 2019 meeting.
Move to approve.
Second? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The next item is review and accept the financial report through November.
So move.
Second?
Second.
Mark, I believe. Yes. We don't have the financial report. Is Heather?
I'm
Oh,
sorry, it's not in the packet?
I guess not.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you. No, let's not do that. I'm sorry, I did not realize that wasn't included. I would suggest tabling it. We can approve it at next month's meeting. I'd not have you approve it without having seen it.
Okay. Do you have to have a motion to table then?
Just someone has to motion, yeah.
I will move to table.
Second? Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is other business. Heather?
So for other business, I remind you all that we are in the second to last step of the allocation process. So we are here on presentation night. We talked last month about all the steps that got us here in terms of local objectives and all of those kinds of things, application. So now we've heard the presentation. In your packet, you have a scoring sheet. So you have an option to use the paper scoring sheet. So that would be just filling it in on pencil and paper. You can either physically bring it to us or mail it to us, or you can scan it and email it to us. We'll accept it whichever way. The other choice you have in your packet that was in your email is the Excel version of your scoring sheet. So if you're comfortable with Excel, I would encourage you to try using the Excel version. It has some controls and some formulas in it that will do the math for you, for one thing, and also prevent you from over-scoring any particular category. So it has some limits on there that keeps you from putting in too high of a number. For the benefit of the new members, I would remind you, and the existing members as well, a few years ago, the CAC made a determination that in order to vote on allocation night, you must complete your scoring sheets in full for each and every agency that applied. So please don't leave any blanks or skip any agencies. The exception would be if you have a conflict of interest. So a conflict of interest with any particular agency would be one for which you have a financial interest. So you or a member of your immediate family are employed by them or in other ways receiving financial benefits from them, or if you're in a decision-making capacity over that agency. So that would be if you're on the board or an immediate member of your family is on the board or in some other decision-making capacity over those agencies. So I would just remind you, if you have a conflict of interest, you don't have to tell us here now, but you would declare that on your form by just writing a C in the boxes all the way across for that agency. So that would be the only instance in which you would not score a particular agency. So as you can see from the form, you have a series of boxes for every agency. Your intent is to read through and score based on each of the criteria in your application packet. I remind you, as I always do, we are not scoring the quality of the agency or the program. There are many, many wonderful agencies, and we're not here to make a decision on which one is valued more or less than another. What you are scoring is the application. How well or how not well did an agency complete the application, make its case for funding, state its reasons and its outcomes and objectives, and how well it meets the CDBG national objectives and local objectives. So I think sometimes people get a little nervous about putting relative scores to agencies. We aren't scoring the quality of the agency, we're scoring the quality of their application. So that would be my reminder there. The scoring sheets are due back to us excuse me, on February 25th. So that gives us as staff a week to track down any forms that might come in a little bit late, or if there are questions on any of them, that we can follow up with you and answer those questions. For example, if you overscore by accident in one box or another, we'll follow up with you and say, well, this criteria could only go up to 10, but you scored 15, so what would you like the score to be? So we'll always follow up back with you. We won't just make decisions about questions that we have. So then once, just so you know the next steps, once those scoring sheets come back to us, we have that week to follow up. We tally up the scores. Then on allocation night, we traditionally have a light supper for CAC before the allocation meeting. So at 5:30 here in the Civil Rights Conference Room, we'll just provide sandwiches and a light supper. And at that meeting, you'll be able to review the scores that are calculated from all members. You will not be able to discuss the scores or make any decisions because that is not a meeting, so there won't be any discussion of them, but you'll have those available to review. The other thing to remind you is, especially for new members, we have two categories of scoring. On your score sheets, there's a front side, which is the non-public services. That would be housing, economic development, and planning and administration. On the back side, we have public services. Those are two discrete categories within CDBG, and they have to be calculated in the formula separately. So we are able to tabulate in advance calculated recommendations for the public service category, but because of the way the numbers work in the non-public service category, until the CAC votes, we won't be able to provide you tabulated amounts for the non-public service category. And I have an instruction sheet I can send out to all of you that will help to clarify that. So then, once we have our little supper, we come in here, the CAC will come to order, and there will be our allocation nights. Each of the calculated amounts by the formula will be discussed. It'll be presented here on the screen for you. And the CAC has the right to review those amounts and to make changes to them if you so choose. It's important to remember that the formula calculated amounts are just that, calculated amounts. As the recommending body, you review them, you can talk about them. If you think there are merits to changes to be made, you can make a motion to make those changes, bearing in mind that the motion needs to be one that passes with 2/3 majority vote, and the motion needs to identify which agency will be reduced in funding and which agency will be increased in funding to make that change. Because the formula allocates all of the dollars that we estimate are available. So changes are possible, but there is, by the CAC's choice, a process to do that. I'm happy to take any questions. I know that we have a lot of new members and scoring can be scary, but my advice would be just, go through it, just be diligent in what you do, and then there's 15 members, and all of the scores wash together and work together to get to a consensus.
Yes, Fred.
In regard to that last statement, I told Martha earlier, be consistent in your scoring. It doesn't really matter that you score the same way that I do or that you score the same way Chad does, as long as you are consistent in the way you're scoring each agency. My question or comment would be, you said the quality of the application, not the agency, to which the only exception I would draw is also the report card.
Correct.
And that does reflect sometimes the quality of the agency, but that's also not necessarily part of the application, but it is important perchance in scoring.
And I would agree with that. For those of you who are new, as you might recall from the evaluation elements, one of the elements is if you have been previously funded with CDBG, have you demonstrated the ability to comply with all of the federal regulations that go along with that? And so, again, what you're scoring there then is your understanding of compliance insofar as the report card form, the dashboard form, the discussions we've had here as a group about which ones are struggling or maybe not struggling. And that's, again, a scoring of compliance, but not necessarily a score of quality or lack of quality in the agency. It's just a score of your understanding of the compliance of the agency at that moment in time. And insofar as scoring, I would encourage you to pull out the evaluation elements sheet and read through them as you get ready to score. We provide you with a framework as much as we can to score. The CAC develops the applications, the CAC developed the evaluation criteria, and it's just meant to help you think about each question individually and where you think on the scale each applicant lies. But at the end of the day, somebody has to put pencil to paper. That's you very fortunate people. I don't envy your task. And it is, at that point, it is a little bit subjective. For you individually, you have to just assign a number, and sometimes it's hard to assign a number to something that is so kind of big as all the many pieces of this. So we appreciate your time and attention to it, and we know it's hard, and please let us know if there's anything we can do to help you. We won't and can't tell you how to score, but we can tell you what the evaluation elements mean in the context of what CAC developed them as. And then I would also remind you, you have the contact list for all of each other. And if you have questions, it is completely within your right to reach out to one other person and talk with them about that. That's all I've got.
All right, thanks. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Second? Second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Tammy, okay. I heard it come that way, but
I thought it was Jim. Okay.